Let's talk about Gail Shickley, our host, a solo performer manager. She runs the APAP Solo Performer Room Extraordinaire, and she's a wonderful friend. Hello, Gail. How are you this week?
I'm great, Stephanie. It's great to see you as always. Thank you so much. It's good to be here, and thanks for being at the forefront of streaming the performing arts during COVID and beyond. And for the vision of Marsh Stream, where we can all enjoy terrific entertainment and insight from so many diverse and outstanding artists. Tonight is no exception with our featured guest, Bob Rader, with an excerpt from his hit solo show, Smoker, followed in conversation with Smoker director Suzanne Bachner and psychotherapist and smoking cessation provider Frank Oden. The shows and guests on Solo Arts Heal, we hope, are filling a special role during this turbulent time as we survive this pandemic and work all to overcome the hate crimes perpetrated against Blacks and Browns, all people of color. Thank you, Stephanie and the Marsh Stream, for your ongoing support for peace and for Black Lives Matter, with shows like Not a Genuine Black Man, a powerful exploration of race and identity by Brian Copeland, among so many other works showcased over the years at the Marsh theaters. So let's all remember as we work together for peace that these crimes are perpetrated by a minority of humans and that we, the majority, are good and will prevail in part because we are able to learn from and engage in the healing power of the arts. I think about last week, we had jazz vocalist and arts healer Frederick Johnson and Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, Susan Meg Salmon. We talked about PTSD and their important work with veterans. I think it's worth repeating Susan Meg Salmon. She's the executive director of the International Arts and Mind Lab at Johns Hopkins. And she believes that the arts are just as vital to our overall health and well being as medicine is. And when they're combined with interdisciplinary collaborative approaches to problem solving, they will help save the world. So here we are, Solo Arts Heal, a theater of resilience and empowering stories that celebrate the accessible and healing power of the arts, where we highlight artists who showcase their personal struggles, physical and mental, sharing excerpts of their award-winning shows that you see here each week. These shows and talkbacks offer not only terrific entertainment, but they're from survivors, caregivers, ultimately health advocates, giving us all valuable resources for audiences everywhere, because every community shares the need for information about overcoming adversity and surviving illness, learning coping skills for cancer or OCD, sensory disorders, sexual or domestic violence, smoking cessation, especially now with vaping also on the rise. So tonight, Smoker, I'm honored to welcome a talented storyteller, Bob Rader. Let me tell you something about him. Bob Rader is an award-winning writer, actor, and monologist. His trio of totally true solo shows, Spitting in the Face of the Devil, Preparation Hex, and Smoker, have toured all over the US and Canada, winning multiple awards and critical and audience acclaim. Spitting in the Face of the Devil is Bob's gripping story of personal survival and triumph. It won 7 Best Awards, including Best Solo Show at the London Fringe, and Best Script and Best Encore at the United Solo Theater Festival, and has raised both funds and awareness for its many nonprofit partners across North America. Smoker won the Best Autobiographical Show award at its world premiere on Theatre Row as part of the United Solo, and went on to receive rave reviews during its Canadian tour and New York City runs. Smoker has partnered with many nonprofit organizations, including Safe Horizon, the American Cancer Society, and the Canadian Lung Association. Bob also performed Smoker as part of a 9-month stint with LifeStage Incorporated as part of their smoking cessation series. Bob trained with the Stella Adler Conservatory at the Tisch School of the Arts and is a member of United Solo Academy, SAG-AFTRA, and the Dramatists Guild, and is the executive director of JMTC Theater. And now, please join me in welcoming a video performance excerpt from his hit solo show, Smoker, Bob Rader.
I'm sitting in an all-white room. It's got bright white carpets, white walls, and ceilings. I'm sitting in a folding chair next to Suzanne, and we are facing Luke, who is also sitting in a folding chair facing us. We are in couples therapy. No, not because there's anything wrong with our relationship. We've only been living together for less than a year. No, this is to help us be better communicators in our relationship. And I have to admit, I am very distracted. Two things keep grabbing my attention. The first is my big toe. See, this all-white room is connected to a gigantic house that Luke and his wife Laura use every year in order to have these kinds of sessions. Before we entered the house, Luke asked us to take off our shoes. Now, I wasn't expecting this, and the small hole in my sock has become bigger since putting it on this morning, and my big toe is sticking out. No matter what I do, it will not stay hidden in the sock. The other major distraction is the only non-white thing in this room. A large window that looks out onto the California hills. It's an amazing view, just gorgeous. But again, I am paying attention and trying to get as much out of this as I can. This is not something I want to be doing in any way. But Suzanne is very big into communication, and she feels that her last few relationships may have been lacking in that area, and she doesn't want that to happen to us. Luke is in jeans and a t-shirt. He is very laid back, tan, the picture of health, and very soft-spoken.
When someone says something to you that makes you feel bad, threatened, or angry, you need to take a moment and say, hey, what you said made me feel bad, threatened, or angry. Was that your intention?
My first thought is, are you out of your fucking mind? I mean, who does that? I mean, when I get really angry, I can't even speak. I mean, the only words I can even mutter at first are, fine. It's fine. That is, until the anger becomes too much, and I have what Suzanne calls an incredible Hulk moment. A burst of rage washes over me, like a thermometer that pops. I clench my fists, bite my tongue, and shake. Look, admittedly, this is not pretty. You know, after that, anything can fly out of my mouth, because when I get really angry, my mind searches for any nasty, horrible thing it can think of to say to the other person to make them feel bad and stop them from hurting or attacking me. I've never hit another person in my whole life. I don't believe in hitting. It's just not in me to do that. But when pushed, I can be a verbal machine gun. But this is also not pretty, but it's my defense system, and thankfully it takes a lot for me to get really angry and Hulk-like. So Suzanne and I are doing these exercises. When you say that, I feel hurt. Was it your intention to hurt me? I hear what you're saying. I understand how you feel. It was never my intention to hurt you.
Okay, hey, you know what? That's going to come a lot easier with time, and the more you do it, the less formal it will seem. So, do either of you have any concerns in the relationship?
You know, I can't think of a thing. I'm just happy to be with Suzanne. I have something. I'd like to talk about Bob's smoking. Bang! Suddenly I am trapped in this all-white prison, and I am no longer present at all. It's like I've left the room and my mind is racing. I'm thinking, well, you never talked to me about this before. Well, how fucking dare you bring this up here in front of this guy who has obviously never smoked a cigarette in his life? Well, of course he's going to take your side on this, and now it's 2 against 1. I can feel my thermometer rising. She doesn't really love me. She's trying to change me into someone she could love. My attention brings me back to the room for a moment as I realize that Luke is speaking to me.
How would you feel about talking about this?
Fine. It's fine. And with that, I'm back in my head again. Look, why doesn't she love me? Well, what do I have to do to get her to love me? As that thought is in my head, 3 images flash through my mind. One of me as a child in a green life vest, another of me in a karate stance, and the last of me in a snowsuit soaking wet. Now these images flash, and the stories that go along with them rush through my mind at the speed of thought. When I was 7 years old, we got a swimming pool in my backyard. It was a 4-foot pool with a walk-around deck, and my father loved that pool. I didn't really know how to swim. I mean, I could dog paddle, and that was about it. And the pool was way too big for me to stand in. Then my mom got me a green life vest that zipped up the front and covered my whole chest. Once when we were swimming, my father grabbed the life vest by the shoulder straps and helped me under the water. As I was flailing around, I could feel his hands on the shoulder straps holding me under. Now, I kicked and squirmed but couldn't get free. I'm not sure if I kicked him or not, but when he finally let me go, I immediately went to the side of the deck and climbed out, coughing and crying.
What are you, a fucking baby? Hey, you know what? From now on, we won't play in the pool together. You just stay away from me.
He didn't talk to me for 2 days after that. The next time we were in the pool together, I let him hold me under. Kung Fu was one of my favorite shows on TV when I was 8. Man, I loved watching David Carradine come into a different town each week, running from the law and trying to stay out of trouble. They usually had 2 big fight scenes in that show. You know, one at the beginning and one they would build to for a huge finish. My father was a black belt in karate and he had some amazing moves. After the show, I always wanted him to show them to me, to play with me. He would show me some moves and then say, "Come at me." Sometimes we'd forget we were playing and I'd get hit really hard and knocked to the ground. Once when we were playing, he kicked me in the chest and I flew against the wall and had a really hard time catching my breath. Mom made us stop after that. I hated fishing, and my father knew it. But after I turned 10, he always wanted me to go along with him. Well, he didn't really want me to go along, but it was a great way to show what a wonderful father he was. On this particular day, it was very cold. So cold that my mom made me wear my snowsuit. The suit was huge, but it kept me pretty warm. My father was very excited because we were going to be fishing with minnows. Now, I couldn't even get the hang of putting worms on a hook, and now he wants me to learn about minnows. He had a special minnow bucket that sat in the water. So, in order to get out a minnow, you had to walk out on a few rocks to the minnow bucket, setting in the middle of the water, open the minnow bucket, grab a minnow, and then come back to the land where the poles are. My father set up the fishing poles and was very content. But we never talked on these trips. He never asked me about school or life in general. We had to be very quiet in order not to scare away the fish. I was bored and he knew it. After a little while, he asked me to get him another minnow. I walked out on the rocks, opened the minnow bucket, and while trying to get out of the minnow, I lost my footing and fell in. My father immediately came over and yanked me out of the water. I don't fucking believe you. How fucking stupid are you? You just want to go home. Well, you can get that out of your head right now. You can sit on that rock over there and wait until I'm ready to leave. I sat in that cold, wet snowsuit for another hour before he was ready to go home. The main thing all of these stories have in common is my father and how hard I tried to get that man to love me. Is that the way it's going to be with Suzanne? How many hoops do I have to jump through to get her to love me? I can feel my thermometer getting ready to pop. I am right at the brink of my Bill Bixby becoming Lou Ferrigno. My mind brings me back to the room, ready to spring and pounce in verbal barrage, and I hear Suzanne say, "I just love Bob so much, and I want to spend the rest of my life with him. And I want that life together to be as long as possible." And with that, all of the anger instantly melts away. The prison becomes a room again. A weird, all-white room. Suzanne does love me. And I realize I have a lot to learn about communication. After Suzanne planted that seed in the weird white room, she never mentioned it again. But something stuck with me, and I started to feel like I wanted to quit. You know, for some reason, the whole idea of quitting became extremely important to me. So, a few months later, I light what I feel will be my final cigarette. And I stare at that cigarette and think, how can something so small have such a hold on me? Look at how tiny and insignificant you are. I am more powerful than you, I know I am. Take another drag. I'm starting to feel really good about my decision. You know what, I am going to be healthier and stronger without you. Take my last drag and drop the cigarette into the Dixie cup I'm using as an ashtray. As soon as that cigarette fizzes out in the water at the bottom of the cup, a wave of panic washes over me. I'm out of cigarettes. Holy shit! That really was my last smoke! Why the hell did I stare at it for so long? I mean, how many drags just burnt away? I should be able to have a do-over. Oh, that way I could appreciate every last second of it. For me, when the desire to smoke hits, it's like everything stops. I can't focus on anything. My only thought is I need to smoke. I feel it through my whole body. And then I hear the smoker voice in my head. It's my voice. It's the same voice that tells me to pull my hand away from the flame, or that I have an itch that needs to be scratched. Okay, that's done. Let's go smoke. Come on, it'll be great. Hey, remember how good that last cigarette was, huh? This one's gonna be even better. I don't know why you're ignoring me. Look, you know you're gonna smoke again. You might as well have one now and feel better. Why wait to feel good? Hey, do it for yourself. You know what? You deserve this. Okay. Just know I am gonna fuck with you every 10 or 15 minutes until you smoke. Just know your life would be better if you smoke. How am I going to be able to function without my coffee and cigarette breakfast? How am I going to be able to write without my smokes? How am I going to be able to perform without my post-show and pre-show smoke? Not to mention the added euphoria of the after sex cigarette. This is a terrible idea. What the hell am I thinking? And the smoker voice in the back of my head just starts screaming over and over again. You will never feel that good again. You will never feel that good again. I am standing outside in the cold December air, and all I want to do is smoke! Thankfully, I know myself, and I knew this would happen, so a month before I decided to quit, I booked myself an appointment with a hypnotist. Look, I'm not sure if it'll work, but I am willing to try anything in order to quit smoking. See, I knew the patch wouldn't work for me. I've seen way too many of my friends go from needing cigarettes to needing the patch to everything that would work for me. I also didn't want to try Chantix, because everyone I talked to who tried it told me that smoking made them nauseous after a while. Look, if I was taking a pill that made me nauseous when I smoked, I would stop taking the pill and keep smoking. A nicotine fit is overpowering at times. I can't hardly focus on anything. My only thought is I need to buy a pack of cigarettes. My hand keeps going to my back pocket in a Pavlovian response to my desire to smoke. I can't sleep, and I can't drown out that nagging smoker voice in the back of my head screaming, you will never feel that good again. You will never feel that good again. The hypnotherapist's Manhattan office is more like a beautiful apartment with hardwood floors and gorgeous furniture. Suzanne and I sit down and wait. I'm a bit nervous. I've never been hypnotized before. He comes out of his office and he is not what I'm expecting at all. I mean, he is a huge man in a sweater and khaki pants. When I first thought about coming to see a hypnotist, I had images of Johnny Carson's Karnak or the amazing Kreskin, you know, thin, confident, powerful. I seem to have a mix between Mr. Rogers and Jabba the Hutt. I'm starting to have my doubts. Hello, you must be Bob! His voice is high and squeaky. Again, nothing like I imagined. I am starting to think this is a big waste of time and money. Look, I am inches away from backing out as he leads me into his hypno room. It is also nothing like I expect. I mean, there's no turning spirals or watches. I mean, it looks like a den. Nothing special at all. And then I see the chair. It's a beautiful black leather reclining chair. I hand him his check. Thank you, please, have a seat. And he points towards the chair. Oh, it is even more comfortable than I thought it would be. And, oh, it still has that new leather smell. Oh, it's like sitting on a leather cloud. Jabba Rogers starts talking, and his voice seems to change just a bit. It's a little more tranquil and has lost some of its comic tone. Now feel your right arm sink into the chair. It is light as a feather. Now, I'm not exactly sure what to expect, so I'm trying to stay as alert as I can, so if something does happen, I'll be ready for it. He goes through relaxing each part of my body. The more he talks, the more relaxed I feel. I'm so comfortable. Then he has me visualize that I'm floating through a door. Oh, it's so easy to do in this amazingly comfortable chair. My mind starts to drift. When is he going to bring up smoking? Who cares about smoking when I feel so relaxed? Oh, I'm floating through the air. What'd he say? I have to pay more attention to what's going on. Oh, I'm so high above everything. Oh, I love this feeling. What do you say? Not doing well at this. Focus, Bob. Try to pay attention to how light you feel, like a feather floating. Then Jabba Roger starts to tell me to open my eyes. I'm not floating anymore. The ride is over. I open my eyes and he's staring at me smiling. How do you feel? I'm fine. Is that it? Yes, that should be fine for our first session. But if your cravings come back, call me. I walk out to Suzanne and while I feel great physically, I also feel a bit ripped off. You know, I never once heard him mention smoking, and we were only in that room for about 15 minutes. As Suzanne and I walked home, I apologized. I'm sorry. I don't think that worked. You know, I just couldn't concentrate. Hey, but you know, we spent a whole lot of money for only 15 minutes. What are you talking about? You were in that room for over an hour. I'm not exactly sure what happened in that room. But after that visit, whenever I felt like having a cigarette, the new non-smoker voice in the back of my head would say, well, why would you want to smoke? Hey, you are a non-smoker. For 3 years after the hypnosis, I feel great. I mean, I didn't need to smoke. No cravings, no desires, no feelings of loss for being a non-smoker. However, when my stress level would get to be a bit too much, the smoker voice would wear me down, and I did find myself thinking about my Camel lights. And on 1 or 2 occasions, I did bum a cigarette off of someone. But every time I did it, I regretted it. I mean, it wasn't the same. It tasted terrible, and the smell stayed on my clothing, my hair, and my hands. It was like seeing that old girlfriend that you still want to be with, but you know in your heart it's over. You've moved on, and she's still the same, and you know she always will be. For 3 years, I was stronger without her than I was with her. I even started to feel healthier. I had a wheeze on my chest, heard it every night before going to bed. I never thought it was from smoking, it was just me getting older. But after it stopped, I had to admit it was smoking that caused it. And even with that knowledge, I still dreamt about my sweet Camel lights. I just had to find a way to really quit. And like most smokers trying to quit, I had to find something that would help relieve some of the stress. A friend of mine recommended indoor cycling, and look, I have to admit now, the idea of taking a spin class never appealed to me. I mean, I was looking for a good cardio workout. Never thought I could get it from just riding a stationary bike. But I decided to give it a try. I'm shown to my bike, taught how to set it up, and clipped my rented shoes into the pedals. The music starts blaring, and the instructor has us doing things like push-ups on the handlebars, and crunches, and all of these core-building exercises. It's a total body workout. She's also yelling out these encouraging statements. Go at your own pace. You know what? You are getting stronger. Live your life like you ride your bike. We also had some time where we were just riding to the beat of the music. And during that time, my mind drifted back to my old bike. I hadn't thought about that bike in years. It was a yellow 5-speed with a black banana seat and huge handlebars that made me feel like I was riding a motorcycle. I had a radio in between the handlebars attached with a lot of tape and a thin orange pole attached to the back of the bike, which had a flag with the Roadrunner on it. I loved that bike. I left that first class smiling, thinking about riding around the back streets of Whitehall, Pennsylvania. The class was pretty intense, and I decided to keep going. I mean, it was positive, it made me feel stronger, and able to face being smoke-free. The more I went cycling, the more I pushed myself, trying to get as much out of each class as I could. And I was enjoying the intensity of it. And then one day I'm in class pedaling pretty hard, and Olivia, the instructor, is yelling out some of those encouraging statements. Only this time she says, forget about everything outside of this room. No one can hurt you when you're riding your bike. And with that, I am no longer in this room. I am that little boy, riding my bike as hard and as fast as I can. Riding through the pain of having an abusive father. Riding through the fear of being hit again. Tearing through the streets, working through the anger and depression. Many times having to pedal standing because of the bruises on my ass and legs. This is my release. This is my escape. And she is right. No one can hurt me when I'm riding my bike. When I am on this bike, I can work through all of those pent-up emotions and truly feel alive. I am not just riding to get away from my father. I'm riding to overcome him. As my mind slowly brings me back to the room, I realize I'm crying. Thankfully, nobody notices because I sweat like crazy during those classes. But I'm not sad. These are tears of joy. When I used to look back at that little boy, I used to feel sorry for him. But today, I realized how resourceful he was. How he could have turned that anger and bitterness on others or on himself, but instead chose to ride it off on his bike. The bike that he loved. The bike that made him feel free. I look back at him, and I'm proud of him. And I also start to feel proud of myself for, at least right now, being able to leave the cigarettes behind.
Wonderful. Bob and Suzanne. Bob, that was wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
That
Thank you so much.
It's funny and it's moving and it's from an ex-smoker. It is so real. Things we go through, and you've had such amazing reviews. You know, Critics' Choice from All About Solo said Smoker is smooth and satisfying, and Winnipeg Free Press said that you are a dynamic storyteller. We're hooked. But one I really love is from who was it? New York Theater Wire? No, I think it was a person from the storyteller, speaker, and co-founder of the Story Whisperers, said that whether you're a smoker or not, Smoker, brilliantly written and performed by Bob Rader and directed by Suzanne Bachner, will move you as a human being and inspire you as a solo performer. It is the perfect storm of excellent writing, incredible storytelling, magnificent acting, and impressive, deft direction. Don't miss it. So don't miss it. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you so
Let
much.
me introduce, Suzanne is right here. So I want to introduce Suzanne and also Frank Oden. But first, I do want to remind the audience that posted in the chat, yes, indeed, is the tip jar. As Stephanie mentioned, the Marsh receives about 70% of its funding through ticket sales, and there are no ticket sales, so any support you're able to give is much appreciated. And also, we encourage questions from the audience, so which you may post in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can. Our wonderful producing director, Brian Williamson, and assistant Brianna will help us keep an eye on that. So pleased now to welcome into the conversation Suzanne Bachner, is an award-winning playwright and director. She is Bob Rader's partner in art and life and proud director and developer of all of his internationally acclaimed award-winning solo shows, including Smoker, and an exciting brand new one in development that we'd like to hear about. Suzanne is a frequent solo show director, including Gloria Rosen's award-winning Listen, Can You Hear Me Now? And her own award-winning solo show, The Good Adoptee, which is dramaturged by Bob Rader and has toured to the London International Fringe Festival and all over the US, most recently to the Stroom Jewish Community Center in Seattle last February. So welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you.
And Frank Oden. Frank, after 30 years of heavy tobacco and marijuana use, including countless failed attempts to quit, Frank Oden visited a hypnotist and immediately quit smoking easily. Embarking on a newfound quest to understand exactly what had happened, he pursued a late life degree in behavioral psychology and became a registered psychotherapist, a clinical tobacco treatment provider, a positive psychology, health, and well-being coach, and an NLP master trainer and a board-certified hypnotherapist. In private practice since 2005, he's helped thousands of individual smokers kick the habit easily without medications or products of any kind, and conducted hundreds of live public seminars and webinars for groups of all sizes. All you have to change is your mind. Frank, welcome.
Thank you.
So, so what inspired you to write Smoker? Christy?
Well, I really wanted to talk about smoking because I think it's one of the really major addictions that people just don't necessarily talk about, and everyone talks about how easy it is to quit. All you need is willpower, right? That's all it takes, and that just so wasn't true. And I also wanted to talk about a smoker's love of smoking, and a lot of the show, which isn't on here, I talk about how much a smoker loves to smoke. It's not just a habit. It's throughout a smoker's life. I mean, it's daily, hourly. It's everything. Right. So to me, I wanted to talk about all of that stuff, all the rituals and all the little things. I talk about my gold Zippo lighter, which was always with me. And just I got jobs through smoking. I met many different women because we smoked together and had conversations. Smoking was like definitely how I met people as a way to connect with a whole bunch of different people. So I really wanted to talk about that because I feel that non-smokers and people who have absolutely no idea what that life is like just didn't understand. And I wanted to try and help people understand that, as well as talk about quitting because I thought it was really, really difficult. And when you talk to any smoker who is smoking, a lot of them don't want to quit, and they don't think there's anything wrong with smoking. And when you talk about the different things that could happen, like you talk about heart disease or lung disease, or and then you see all those commercials on television with people with missing limbs and stuff like that, all from smoking and stuff like that. I mean, the major denial of a smoker is that we don't think that any of those things will ever happen to us,
right?
For whatever reason. So I wanted to talk about my love of it and why I quit.
That's great. And Suzanne, you must have been thrilled when he decided to write this play and see The Hypnotist. First of all, we'll bring in Frank in a moment, but that must have been something for you as working on.
Well, it was really interesting experiencing the whole thing in life with Bob, and then working on the show with him. Having worked on Spinning in the Face of the Devil, it was all of a sudden, it was like, oh, I'm a character in this? What? So it was very personal, and it was a really interesting dynamic to go through the whole process and to watch Bob, quit smoking and try to quit smoking and love smoking in life and slip up. And, I actually have the timeline of, as a great enabler, I have the exact timeline of like every last cigarette he had. He has no idea. It's like I keep the math on it.
What surprised you the most in the process of creating the show?
The most surprising thing for me was that I didn't realize that my father was going to be such a prominent character in the piece. Because I wrote Spitting in the Face of the Devil about my abusive relationship with my father. So I thought that was gone. I thought that was done. And I had gotten that out of my system. But as I was writing this piece, I realized that one of the reasons why quitting was so difficult for me was because it was really the only connection I ever had with him. Because we never did anything together except, we smoked together. That's what we did. I mean, as a family, we sat around, we watched TV, and we all smoked together. So that was the only thing the only connection that I had to him at all. And so I feel like I had to realize that and come to terms with that so that I could actually let it go. I mean, even after I went through the hypnotism, which was amazing, and it was the thing that got me to go from being a pack-a-day smoker, I was still smoking every so often. You know, sneaking around and still smoking every so often, especially when my stress level would get to be a bit much.
During French chores.
Yeah. Whoa, yeah. but I think a lot of that again was my connection with smoking as a release, but it was also not wanting to give it up totally, because not wanting to lose that connection with him.
Yes, I relate. And Frank, you must hear this every day from people with different reasons, and the habits that we form, and how do we break those habits. Tell us a bit about your work.
Well, I first of all, back to Bob and Suzanne and your work, you've really captured a lot of the kind of thing I see every day. It's true. I've, with thousands of smokers, this has been my life for the past 15 years, is sitting in a room talking with people about smoking. I have worked as a hypnotherapist, but expanded from that into being really just taking on the whole process. And you did a great job of capturing that conflict that nearly every smoker experiences, myself included. I was there myself, where you think it's a love affair. You think it's the most important thing. You think you can't do without it. Who would I be without this? I totally connect to, and that was very well stated. And then the transition that I see people make is related to what you described. I would want to know so much more. And I don't know if in your full length production, if you talk much more about the experience at the hypnotherapy office. But it's so interesting how people come to that with an expectation that something magical will happen. And truthfully, in a lot of cases, it's not that important what. As long as it has a certain feeling to it, there's the capacity for release there. No doubt the person at least asked you wanted to make sure that you were ready to quit. I mean, no hypnotist can do anything to make a person quit smoking if they don't want to. But if that's in there and you know that you want to, and from a previous conversation, it sounds like you did some advanced work that we didn't hear about in the piece tonight, but that you did a good deal of preparation to get ready for that. When you come to it with that desire, really there's no specific content required. What's required is just that experience, that sort of ceremonial, that release. There's a bit of theatricality maybe to it that allows you to say, okay, and in your own words, you put it from being someone who was trying to quit, which is a very difficult place to be. And all of that stuff about when you feel it's difficult, it's because you're trying to quit. But after you left, the phrase that you used was your non-smoker voice says this idea to you. And it's an identity transformation. It says going from being a smoker who's trying to quit into being a non-smoker and having that voice with a completely different orientation. It's a transformation that happens. And I believe that the person in the chair, that the smoker is the one who does that. And a good hypnotherapist is a good guide maybe to help a person make that transition. I wish there was some magical power that a hypnotherapist had to do a thing to you to say, here, boom, now you're not. Unfortunately, they don't teach that in hypnotherapy school. And it's probably illegal if you could do it. But to help people through that transition, it sounds like, I think what I heard you saying is what you did that day. You made that perception change. You shifted your perception into someone who wasn't just, I'll just quickly add, when you said that to the extent you're saying for now, or maybe there was still some more smoking after that, or it's not completely 100% resolved by that, whatever percentage that other little voice is still in there that says, well, I'm still maybe thinking that I might smoke, is where you might occasionally experience some difficulty. The ultimate goal is to get rid of that little self-doubt, that little voice that says, maybe I will. A 100% non-smoker never struggles. It becomes easy when you know you're not going to smoke.
Well, I can say that, it's been a while since I've had a cigarette, and it has been, very, very, it's every day, gets easier and easier and easier, of course. And now I don't think about it because I don't want it. It's no longer a part of my life at all in any way. But I know that I have a fairly addictive personality.
Oh, well, you'll get me started on that one.
And while I would love to say that cigarettes are gone, they are no longer a part of my life, and I'm never going to go there again, I think that that could possibly be a lie. Again, because I have that kind of personality. But
Well,
right now, I am so thrilled and happy to not have cigarettes in my life. Very thrilled and happy.
No, you're never smoking again.
That's the statement you want to be making. When you know you're never going to smoke again, then you're not counting the minutes. You're not counting the packs or wondering what's going to happen today. It's about decisiveness as much as anything. Much more than willpower. You brought that up, the idea of willpower. I think this is when people are struggling, they're seeing it as a battle of the will. I got to use my willpower to fight this thing down, when really the easy solution is actually about a release. It's about letting go and not letting it be your problem anymore, putting it behind you and moving forward in a positive way.
Right. And I love the fact that I don't even think about it anymore.
I do sometimes actually see smoke coming from him when he's doing the show.
Oh, just out of the lungs?
Yeah, I think he's actually smoking on stage. So
Oh, yeah.
it's like he's really enjoying it when he's
But
performing
Bob,
the show.
there's something, Bob, in just doing that gesture that you did a bunch of times. If I do that right now, that's a trigger. It feels like there's just that gesture, that inhale, that hand to the mouth thing conjures up something that feels a little bit like smoking, doesn't it? Does you feel that's a trigger?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm on stage, I want people to, I want the smokers to be like, oh yeah, that would be great. I want people to feel that way, and then I want the non-smokers to be like, oh, that looks interesting. He looks like he's really enjoying that. Because that's what it's all about for the smoker.
Yeah, and well done. I mean, you really captured that sense of how smokers really do feel about that. And that's the main obstacle or the process that I take on with people. And Gail, you asked, what's it like on a daily basis? What do you see? It's about really kind of going into those ideas and helping people reframe them and go, is it really a love relationship? If you had a love partner or even a friend who treated you the way cigarettes treat you, would you really make that same analogy? Someone who's putting poison in your body and taking money out of your pocket and making you smell bad and you're embarrassed to introduce to others. You kind of break down some of the narrative is a big part of that sustains it. Much more than a personality. I had to jump in. You said addictive personality. Technically, that you won't be able to get an insurance coverage for that diagnosis from the DSM-4. It doesn't really exist in that way, unless you want to say that all human beings have this potential to pick up addictions. If you do an addictive, you can take a drug over and over again, it certainly becomes habit forming.
Right.
And we start to think that's who we are. It gets into that cognition.
I have to say, Frank, that Bob is a Virgo man, and he was the best smelling smoker I've ever encountered. Never smelled smoke on him. Like, even if he was smoking on the corner, he would not smell like smoke. It was remarkable. Well,
even smokers who are doing it will still feel sometimes that smoke smells good. You don't, until you start smelling it without the attendant drug effect at the same time, smokers don't even notice that it doesn't smell great. They might think this is really it's a meaningful smell. I'm connected to it.
I talk about this in the show, the longer version of the show. One of the first times I tried to quit, I was getting out of a relationship. I was moving into a new apartment. And I was like, when I move into this new apartment, my apartment is going to be smoke-free. And I talk about never feeling comfortable in my new apartment. No matter what I did, no matter how I tried to do things, I just didn't feel comfortable in it. There was something missing. There was always something missing. And it was that smell, because to me, that smell was home. Because I grew up, my parents smoked my whole entire life. I was around smoke forever. So to me, that smell was home.
Oh, I totally understand. And my father smoked, and that's the smell of my father too. And as you were talking about your dad, lots of connections, resonance there too, as well in your performance. the most bonding experience that I ever had with my own father was when he offered me a cigarette. The first time I ever smoked with him at his father's funeral. So here's the men in the family smoking, connecting, bonding around it. You know, this really important male bonding experience was over that cigarette. And it was the first time that I ever smoked in front of him. And wow, that's a really powerful thing, right? So it smells, and that smell gets connected to that emotion memory.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. And Bob, you performed. What was it like performing in a smoking cessation program?
The hardest crowd I have ever performed for in my whole entire life. They were. It was really a group of people who were getting money off of their insurance to attend a smoking cessation program. And so we would come in at all different hours, sometimes 9 o'clock in the morning, into a conference room with fluorescent lights on. And I would do the show. And most of the time they would be sitting there like this for the whole time. So it's a very rough audience because the only thing that they're thinking is, when can I get out of here and have a smoke? Right? I mean, if I was a smoker and I had to attend a class like that, I know I would be thinking the same thing. But what happened is, because most of the time, what happens in a lot of these classes, and the ones that we were involved in were very different, because Jude was always trying to find different ways to get people to think about why they're smoking and things like that. So when I would come in and do the show, because so much of my show talks about my love of smoking, they realized that I was like they were. You know, I was in the same boat for a long period of time where they are right now. So the more the show went on, the more relaxed they got, and the more they understood that I wasn't going to sit there and tell them that they're evil and they're horrible people because they smoke. You know, I was there telling them that, you know, I made it. I got through. I quit. You can too. And that's really what it's that kind of thinking was about.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really wonderful. And I was honored to be able to do it. And it was truly a wonderful. It was a great experience, but it was also really the hardest crowd ever.
I'll bet. Well, over the years, you know, my smoking on and off, I've gotten treatment through the Fontana Tobacco Treatment Center here at UCSF in San Francisco. And it's a wonderful program. And they do allow all sorts of different aids that one might use for quitting smoking, and talk about different drugs or Chantix or Wellbutrin, but also the patch and the gum and different oral things. And some different people have success with different methods. And the idea being, whatever really can help you quit is a very good thing. It's better than smoking itself. And eventually you want to wean yourself off the nicotine. But
100%. I agree with that 100%. I mean, whatever works for you. Try everything. I mean, I tried a lot of different things, but for me, I knew that if I had, for me, I knew if I had that crutch, like if I had the patch, I saw a lot of my friends go from needing cigarettes to needing that patch. And when they didn't have the patch, they got just as cranky and upset as I would if I didn't have a cigarette. So I was like, I don't think I want to do that, because for me, I know that I could easily become like that. I also didn't want to try Chantix for me, because if I was taking a pill that made me nauseous when I smoked, I would stop taking the pill and keep smoking. I mean, that's just, you know, that's who I am. I know that. You know.
Absolutely. It's wonderful that you found the hypnotherapy, and it's wonderful to have Frank here, and your slogan, Frank, I so love, and it's really something that I think about, and it's all you have to change is your mind. You know?
Yeah. Well, I do spend a lot of time with those other strategies, and people have, usually by the time somebody comes to me, they've tried those other things. They've tried everything. By the time a person calls me, they often say that. The problem with it is, as Bob says, when you replace, it's about the nicotine. The method, the delivery system doesn't matter much at all. If you keep taking nicotine, you're continuing to reinforce those triggers and those desires. You have to stop the flow of nicotine in order for that desire to go away. It has to happen in that sequence. As long as somebody's vaping or gum and lozenges, I've had so many clients I've had clients come in to get off of the gum or the lozenges. They haven't smoked in 10 years, but they're still trying to deal with their nicotine habit. And the resolution to that is, as you say, it's a shift in your perceptions. Changing how you think about it is where the answer lies, versus a willpower battle or a chemical battle. Change the narrative.
And Frank, talk about the vaping for a minute. That really concerns me, how much vaping is going on. I see just plumes of smoke as you walk down the street. We have it both with cannabis as well as nicotine. So I see more and more kids, and there's the flavored stuff. It seems evil to me.
Well, you're right. I mean, it's taken on a life of its own, and has the potential to become much bigger than cigarettes. In the United States, tobacco is kind of on the way out. It's passé, right? But vaping is brand new. It's high tech, and it's really caught on with young people, and especially teenagers. Colorado, where I live in Denver, Colorado, we have the highest teen vaping rate in the nation, because it's rampant in high schools. It's the Juul and the vaping, it's so much, more accessible to them. So that's a really problematic aspect to it. But for adults who are quitting smoking, there's a case to be made that harm reduction, if you're saying, well, let's do something I'm going to work my way out of this habit. I can step toward to vaping, and maybe it's certainly not as harmful as smoking, as far as we know. That does not mean that it's safe in any way. There's no evidence suggesting that it's safe for a person to vape, but it's clearly not as dangerous as smoking, statistically, so far. Give it 20 years, we'll know a lot more.
We don't really know what the long-term effects on our lungs are, I think, from the vape yet, do we?
Right. No, that we don't have that there's not been that cohort that's starting now. They didn't know the real harms of smoking until people had been doing it for 20 years, because that's when the damage starts to really show up. So it's, in other countries, it's actually recommended. In Britain, they're saying the equivalent of the FDA recommends vaping as a tobacco cessation tool. In the US, we don't recommend it, but when clients say that they think it can help them, I would definitely want to help. As long as it's carefully managed, and they're going to get right off of that the same way they would want to get right off of the gum or the patch, then it can be helpful if it helps them ease their mind, really. The chemistry of it is a non-issue. I mean, the nicotine addiction is not really the big problem with smoking. It's that emotional connection that Bob's talking about. It's the story, the narrative that we build into it. So we got to change that, and then the chemistry takes care of itself.
But doesn't the vape stuff have? I mean, some of that it is just as much junk as inside a cigarette.
Oh,
right?
yeah, and it's absolutely, and it's not regulated either in the way that other products are. We don't know what's in a lot of that stuff, and there's all these little boutique mom and pop shops that make their own brew that you can buy to put in there. You get stuff online, you buy it from China. People get these things from all over the place. The tobacco industry is heavily invested in that now, in e-cigarettes and what's called electronic nicotine delivery systems, ENDS.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a big branded mass market approach to that, but that's only a percentage of the market. A lot of the people are more interested in the sort of mod vapes where they can make their own creation and cook up their own juice, and all the flavors that are like candy and cereal flavors and fruit flavors that are really appeal to young people.
Incredible.
We've tried to get all these companies to sponsor the show, and they just won't. I don't know why.
Yeah, I haven't been able to get a tobacco company to sponsor my seminars either. I don't know why.
Oh dear. So Bob, you went one time, was it?
I went twice. I went one time, was great, and then some of the cravings started coming back, and I went back and did it again. It was part of a it was some kind of plan where you pay a certain amount of money, and then you could go as many times as you wanted.
Six. That would be six, as long as it was six.
Right. Okay. So you could go 6 times. So you could go 6 times, and see him that many times, and then I think it was also spread out through so many through an extended period of time, wasn't it? Like a year or something like that. And yeah, I went twice, and I did not feel the need to go back. And I wish I would remember who exactly that was. It was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not remember his name, but he was amazing.
Well, that's
I have a
great.
pressing
Frank,
question.
I know is amazing, and I want to know how many times on average do people come to you for the hypnotherapy?
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to comment on that as how my practice has changed dramatically since I first started. I was a straight up hypnotherapist, and when you're just doing that, there's a business model for hypnotherapy. I wanted to ask you more. When you went back the second time, was it, for as far as you could tell, was it exactly the same thing the second time, or was there anything different?
It's so hard to tell, because the second time I went, I wasn't as on that euphoric kind of ride as I was the first time. So I was able to hear more. I was able to take in more of what was being said on a conscious level as opposed to a subconscious level. So I was able to take it in and actually hear him mention smoking and things like that. So the second time was a little more
You're more aware.
grounded. Yeah, a little more grounded.
Yeah.
We just
So
have
there's a
couple of-
business model that says, and you see it's advertised a lot. It's a 1-hour session, guaranteed for life, and it might be $600, but you're going to come, and if you don't, and like you said there, well, if your cravings come back, you can come back too. Now, if you go to that person and you don't quit smoking from this 1-hour session, which is really going to be a very tightly scripted hour-long session, it's a performance that the person can do. I'm probably going to get kicked out of the Hypnotist Guild now for telling you these things. But I don't care, truthfully. I'm really distancing from that whole thing. So if you don't stop smoking, you could come back, is the offer. So if you do show up and you quit in that 1-hour session, then great, that person just made $600 an hour. Well, if you go away and you smoke some more and then you come back, well, I got to come back. Great, sure, guaranteed for life, right? You come back, you do it a second time, and then you leave. Well, now they're still making $300 an hour. If that second time didn't work, I can tell you why I put that in. If it didn't work the second time, are you even going to come back a third time? Or if you come back 6 times or a dozen times for that same 1-hour spiel every single time, I don't see how that's really designed to be an optimal help to the smoker. My process, usually it's designed to be a 1-session process. I do a really intensive intervention with a person. We might spend the whole morning together. Only a small portion of that is going to be a formal hypnosis process, if that's even involved. A lot of clients don't even want that. I tend to use mindfulness practices more now than hypnotherapy practices, because the person's more invested in that. They have more of a stake in what they're doing. They're learning a skill that they can use going forward.
Frank, we need to wrap up a little.
Yeah, sorry.
But please do continue.
The answer to your question is it depends on the client. If somebody, the way I work it, I'm gonna work with somebody until they're happy that they're successfully made it where they want to be. It's not based on hours or sessions or like that.
That's
so
great.
The process.
That's fantastic.
And it's different. If you come back to see me a second time, we're gonna have a completely different conversation based on what you experienced since the last time we met. So it's not there's no cookie cutter, is what I've learned.
I'll tell you, I've been with Frank, and it's a very good experience. So, so I do recommend it. And also, I'm just so happy to have all of you here. Suzanne, I wish we'd gotten a little more into talking about the production. You did such a beautiful job in that. But we're out of time tonight. Did you have a closing comment, Bob?
No, have you quit?
Yes.
And what was it that took you there?
You know, on and off over the years, I would go through periods of really, you know, starting to smoke again. But I think it's really, for one thing, I have a son, and it's very important to me that I set a good example for him, because I don't feel very good that he started smoking, and and you know, it goes from one to the other. And also, I keep in mind very much how much I hate the tobacco companies, and the fact that literally we have in our brains a physical thing that has created our need for nicotine, you know, and I just really, that makes me angry. I just want to overcome that. And of course, overall health. So I keep that in mind all the time and try to practice, you know, mindful practices, as Frank pointed out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And thank you for a fabulous show. It's really great having you here tonight. And I want to thank you and Suzanne, and to Frank, Oden, and to our Zoom audience. And also, I want to announce that next week we have a wonderful show. Joanna Rush, playwright, actor, dancer, choreographer. She's going to be in her award-winning show, outstanding show called Kick. It's about dancer Bernie O'Connell on her way from her first big New York audition, is tricked into a car and attacked in a vacant lot off the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. And Kick follows Bernie from a kick line to a chorus line to Hollywood and back, as she picks up the pieces and finds the glue to put herself back together again. It's New York theater called it drama, comedy, honesty, and more. It allows the audience to heal rather than just watch. And it's really how theater should connect to people, said Pulitzer Prize winning critic Margot Jefferson. So please join us next week when we will have Joanna Rush in Kick. And meantime, thank you all. Thank you to the producers, Brian and Brianna. Thank you for helping tonight. And as always, Stephanie, thank you. See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Thank you all.
Thank
For
you.
our tip jar, remember our tip jar? Watch more stream every night at 7:30. Don't forget at noon, you can sing and get fit. Thank you, Gail, Bob, Suzanne, and Frank. And our producers and our people, all our people. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow night at my Irma Herrera, Stephanie's March stream.